Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Muhammad Abu Bakr, and in this video we shall be solving the Cambridge O-Level Chemistry question paper number 11 from the May-June 2023 series. Paper 1 of multiple choice questions only. So let's start our video. So the first question is, now, in a change of state at constant temperature and pressure, energy, the first thing is that energy is released as stronger forces of attraction form between the particles. So that's number one thing. The average distance between the particles changes very little. Now, energy, now what which change of state is being described? Energy is released as stronger forces of stronger forces of attraction form. So now it means that the particles have come together, not apart. So B is incorrect. Now it similarly D is also incorrect because the particles have now being formed with stronger forces of attraction. So it can either be A or C. And then second thing is that the average distance between the particles changes very little. So it means that a liquid is converting into solids because liquid has some spaces between its molecules, but not very much in comparison to gas. If a gas converts into liquid, the average distance between the particles changes drastically. So I had say that C, a liquid will change into a solid as energy is released, stronger forces of attraction is formed, and average distance between the particles changes very little. So C is the right option. Now question number 2. X, Y and Z are elements. X and Y are in the same period of the periodic table, and Y and Z are in the same group of the periodic table. Now, what are the possible electronic configurations for X, Y and Z? Now first thing is that X and Y are in the same period, means that X and Y both will have the same number of quantum shells. They will have same number of shells. So it can be 1 A, B or D, not C, because X and Y have same number of shells. The second thing is that Y and Z. Now Y and Z are in the same group of the periodic table, means that they will have the same number of outermost electrons. So I think B is true, because yes, B is true, because in Y the outermost electrons are 7, and similarly in Z they are 7. In Y, in A they are in Y are 7, and in Z are 4. So A is incorrect, B is true, and D is incorrect because Z has 4 electrons in the outermost shell. So only we are left with B. Now again the concepts applied here are that X and Y are same period, so they have same number of shells. Y and Z will have same number of electrons in the outermost shell. So B is the right option. Question number 3 is again very easy. The number of electrons, protons and neutrons in four particles, different particles are shown. Now, which particles are isotopes of the same element? What are isotopes? Isotopes have same atomic number but different mass number. So 19, 19, 19. So 3 is not the isotope of any element of 1, 3, 1, 2 and 4. Now 2 is an here it has lost electrons. So 2 is a positive ion, it is a cation because it has lost one electron. So 2 is incorrect. Then only we are left with 1 and 4. 1 has 19 protons, 4 has 19 protons, 1 has 20 neutrons, 4 has 22 neutrons, means that they both are isotopes of the same element. So C is the right option. Question number 4 is, some statements about the bonding in the magnesium chloride are listed. Now each magnesium atom donates 2 electrons, each chlorine atom accepts 1 electron, each magnesium donates 2, and each chlorine accepts 1. Yes, this is true. Chlorine forms an ion with 2 negative charge. No, it forms an ion with 1 negative charge. Magnesium atoms and chlorine share atoms. No, it is ionic bonding, so atoms are transferred. Magnesium forms an ion with a 2 positive charge. Yes, this is true. 1 and 4. B is the right option. Now the question number 5, ethane, C2H6 and ammonia are covalent compound NH3. The dot and cross diagrams of these compounds are shown. Which statements are correct? A molecule of ethane contains twice as many hydrogen atoms as a molecule of ammonia. Molecule of ethane C2H6 has double of hydrogen atoms as are in ammonia. Yes, this is true. Ammonia has 3, ethane has 6, so 1 is true. An unreacted nitrogen atom has 5 outer shell electrons. Now, nitrogen has an atomic number of 7. It has 2 in the first shell and 5 in the next shell. So yes, this is true as well. Now, in the third, in a molecule of ethane, the bond formed between the carbon atom is formed by sharing 2 electrons, one from each carbon atom. So it is formed by sharing 2 electrons, one from each carbon atom. Yes, this is again true. So that means all of these are correct. A is the right option. Question number 6. When a strip of copper is placed in aqueous silver nitrate, a displacement reaction take place. Now, what is the ionic equation for the reaction which is taking place? For the ionic equation, first the ions are replaced here. So in I check A, if I check A, Ag positive plus copper, Ag copper plus electron. Electron is formed here, so it is incorrect. No electron is formed actually. I check B, so there are 2 Ag positive. So copper will, strip of copper will displace them. 2 is true. This is right because copper will displace here and copper will form something with NO3, like something like this. C is the general statement. This is the general reaction. C is incorrect, and D has shown that silver has been oxidized here. So D is also incorrect. B is the right option. Question number 7. 3 compounds are listed. Now, which row shows the element present at the greatest mass by percentage in each compound? Now, first I have to find the MR. For MR of calcium carbonate, it is 100. For potassium sulfate, it is 39 plus 32 plus 64. It is 135. And for zinc nitrate, it is 65 plus 28 plus 16 into 6. It is 189. Now I have to find the element which is present in the greatest quantity in these in these compounds. Now, the element present in the greatest percentage by mass in calcium carbonate, it is formed by 40 of calcium plus 12 of carbon and 48 of oxygen. So definitely oxygen here is present in the most quantity. I am writing it as MQ, most quantity. So either A or B, or either C and D can be true. Now, greatest mass in potassium sulfate, so it is formed by 39 of the potassium along with no, it is formed by 78 of the potassium because there are 2 K2SO4. So there are 2 potassium atoms, K 78 along with 32 with 78 plus 32 plus 64. So that is 174. This is total mass is 174 plus 32 plus 64. Now definitely I can see here that potassium is present in most quantity MQ. So it is potassium, and now present in the greatest mass in zinc nitrate. I know this is oxygen. So if you look at the formula of zinc nitrate, ZnNO3 taken twice, there are 6 oxygens. So 16 into 6, that is 96, plus there are 28 nitrogen, 28 of the nitrogen and 65. So the greatest mass here is of the oxygen. Once again, oxygen is present in greatest quantity. So D is the right option. Question number 7. Question number 8. Two aqueous solutions Q and R have the same concentration in moles per decimeter cube. Now, solution Q contains 4 gram of NaOH in 500 centimeter cube of solution. Which solution could be solution R? Now it is simply I have to find the concentration of solution Q, and then I will have to find one solution which has the concentration same as of solution Q. So for solution Q, the concentration is moles per volume in decimeter cube. Decimeter cube. Now I have 4 grams, and the mass of 1 mole is 40 grams of NaOH. So I have 4 divided by 10. So I have 4 divided by 40. Sorry. So I have 0.1 mole of NaOH in a concentration of 500 divided by 1000. 500 divided by 1000. mm, that is 0.5. So the concentration would be 0.1 divided by answer. So the concentration of solution Q is 0.2 moles per decimeter cube. 0.2 moles per decimeter cube. Now both Q and R have the same concentration. So simply the formula will remain the same here. This formula will be applied to all of these. So if I check is I divide 0.2 over 0.025, 0.25 decimeter cube, so that is 0.8. So A is incorrect. If I divide 0.2 with 0.1, so that is 2. No, sorry, 0.2 divided by 1 divided by 1000. 100 divided by 1000, that is 0.1, and I have 0.2 divided by 0.1, that is 2. So the concentration here is 2, so it is also incorrect. Now I divide 0.05 with 0.25, so that is 0.2. So C is the right answer. In B the concentration is 2, in C it is 0.2, so that's what we need. D is also incorrect. 0.1 divided by 1, so that is 0.1. So D is also incorrect. C is the right option. Question number 9, a very I would not say a tricky question, but some students might face extreme difficulty in solving this question, but it is relatively very easy if you simply apply your knowledge in this question. I had refer it as an A star question. Now samples of uh, two hydrated compounds are weighed and then dehydrated by heating. The anhydrous compounds are weighed and the results are shown. 3.97 gram of hydrated ferrous sulfate gives 2.17 gram anhydrous FeSO4, and 2.88 gram CaSO4 gives hydrous CaSO4 gives 2.27 gram of anhydrous calcium sulfate. Now, first of all, I think I have to measure the MR of FeSO4 and calcium sulfate. So it is 152 and it is 136. Now, how I can solve this is that 2.17 gram of anhydrous FeSO4 is produced. So if I divide 2.17 with 152, so 2.17 over 152, so the molarity is 0.0142 moles. Similarly, in the case of calcium sulfate, it is 2.27 divided by 136. So 2.27. So that will be 0.0166 moles. Now 3.97 gram of this compound gives 1 mole of anhydrous ferrous sulfate. So if means what? If I have 0.0142 moles of this compound, which is hydrous ferrous sulfate, it gives me 0.014 mole of anhydrous ferrous sulfate. So simply I have to find the mass of the ferrous sulfate here. I have to divide the actual mass with the molar mass of this compound, and if it is equal to this and this, then I had say that one of these four options for x is true. Now if I put uh, for values of x, if I cross check, if I put 5 for h2, if I put fs for 5 h2o, the mass comes out to be 242. Now I have 3.97 over 242. So 3.97 divided by 242, so that is 0.0164, which is not equal to the required answer. That is equal to 0.0164, that is not equal to 0.0142. So this is incorrect. Now if I put 7H2O here, then the mass comes out to be 152 plus 7 into 18. So 278 is the mass of this whole compound, 278, and I divide it by 3.97. Then the molarity is now definitely equal to 278 is definitely equal to 0.01428 moles of anhydrous ferrous sulfate. Means that if I have 0.0142 moles of hydrous ferrous sulfate, which contains 7 water molecules, it will give me 0.0142 moles of ferrous sulfate. So that means the total number of x is 7 here. Now if I check for this second calcium sulfate, I have the total mass, I have the given mass of, now this again, 0.016 mole, 0.016 mole of this compound should give me 0.016 moles of anhydrous calcium sulfate. Means that I apply the same concepts here. Now if I check the value of y, I'm putting 2 first here, so the 136 plus 36, and I divide, so the mass of this and mass of calcium sulfate for the value of 2H2O is 172, and I divide it by 2.88, which is the given molarity. So 2.88 divided by answer, that is 0.0167. So that is true. So that is equal to 0.0167. Now I hope you have understood this question, a very tricky one. You have to thoroughly apply your concepts and you have to put a lot of effort in this. Some of you might not be able to do this, but it is not much hard if you think rightly. Again, I apply the concepts here. I have 3.97 gram of hydrous ferrous sulfate, which gives me 2.17 gram of anhydrous ferrous sulfate. The mass of ferrous sulfate is 152, as you can see, and the given mass is 2.17. So the molarity of the compound obtained is 0.0142 moles. Now if I have I get 0.0142 moles of anhydrous ferrous sulfate, then similarly I also should have 0.0142 moles of hydrous ferrous sulfate. So to calculate this molarity here, to calculate the molarity of this hydrous ferrous sulfate, I cross check the values of x here, which are the water of crystallization. If I put 5, it is not equal to 0.0142 moles. If I put 7, it is equal to 0.0142 mole. So similar. So now if I put 7, it is equal. So both molarity on the on for the hydrous ferrous sulfate and for the anhydrous ferrous sulfate are both equal. So D would be right answer. Similarly, if you can check the same concept for the calcium sulfate, and then you will obtain your answer. So question number 10 here. What has a mass equal to the mass of 1 mole of water? Now the 24 decimeter cube of water at room temperature and pressure. No, this may have unknown mass of water, so A is incorrect. We cannot infer from this graph what is the mass of 24 decimeter cube of water at RTP. We cannot infer this from this question. 1 mole of steam at 200 degrees C and 100 kilopascal pressure. So 1 mole of steam is water actually. 1 mole of steam at 200 degrees C and 100 kilopascal pressure. Now, the thing here is pressure and temperature has nothing to do with the mass of 1 mole of water. If there is 1 mole of water in the liquid state, the 1 mole of mass of water in the steam would be same. So B is the right option. One molecule of water, no, one molecule is never equal to 1 mole. 2 moles of hydrogen molecules and 1 mole of oxygen molecules. 1 mole of oxygen molecule has a MR of 32, and for hydrogen it is 2. So D is also incorrect. B is the right option. Question number 11. Concentrated aqueous sodium chloride is electrolyzed using inert electrodes. Which row shows what happens in the electrolysis and why it happens? Now, during the electrolysis, the change occurring is oxygen is discharged at the anode. No, it is not. Why? Because it is a Nelson cell. It is the Nelson cell. Nelson cell does not produce oxygen at the anode. It is produced in the down cell. So A is incorrect. During the electrolysis, the pH of the electrolyte increases. Yes, this is true because the OH negative ions are present in the solution. So yes, this can be true, and explanation is this: the electrolysis in aqueous solution involves the reduction of H positive ions. Yes, this is true as well. So yes, B is true. The electrolyte pH increases. Solid sodium is produced at the cathode. No, sodium is not produced. NaOH is produced. The products stay the same if the aqueous sodium chloride is replaced. No, products do not stay the same. In the Nelson cell, NaOH is produced, but in the down cell, sodium and chlorine can be produced. So only B is the right option. Question number 12. Which statement about the energy changes during a chemical reaction are correct? Activation energy EA is the maximum energy the colliding particles must have in order to react. No, it is the minimum energy, not the maximum. It is the minimum energy. During an endothermic reaction, energy is taken in from the surroundings, leading to a decrease in the temperature of the surroundings. Yes, this is true. The making of chemical bonds is an exothermic process. Yes, energy is released when a chemical bond is made. So yes, for question number 12, so 2 and 3 are correct. C is the right option. Question number 13 is two gases react inside a sealed vessel. Which change in the conditions would increase the rate of the reaction? So increasing the pressure inside the vessel will definitely favor the rate of reaction. Increasing the temperature will again favor the reaction because of successive collisions between the particles. Increasing the volume of the vessel, increasing the volume, I think will decrease, because now the if I increase the volume, then pressure will decrease. So 3 is incorrect. Only 1 and 2 are correct. B is the right option. Question number 14 is catalyst change the rate of chemical reactions. Which statement correctly describe the effect of adding a catalyst to a reaction? All reactant particles have more energy and move faster. No, catalyst never increase the energy of the reactant particles. The activation energy EA is lowered. Yes, this is true. More reactant particles collide with enough energy to react. This is also true. Catalyst provides the energy which the reactant requires to react during collision. So C is the right option. Question number 15. The equation for a chemical reaction in the contact process is shown. The conditions used are for 50 degrees C, 2 atmosphere pressure and a catalyst. What will be effect when the temperature is reduced to 50 degrees C and the catalyst is removed? Now, when the catalyst is removed, temperature is reduced to 250 degrees C. Now the forward reaction here is exothermic, as you can see. Now if I decrease the rate, if I decrease the temperature here, then the rate of forward reaction will decrease. If I decrease the temperature, the rate of forward reaction will decrease because it is already an exothermic, exothermic reaction, and the percentage of SO3 in the equilibrium mixture, the percentage of SO3 in the equilibrium mixture. Now I think it will increase here when the temperature is reduced to 250 degrees C and the catalyst is removed. Yes, the percentage of SO3 in the equilibrium mixture will increase. Why? Because now I remove the catalyst here and I lower the temperature here and the pressure remains the same. Means that there are 3 moles here of sulfur, 3 moles of gases here and 2 moles of gases here. This pressure applied here, this pressure will definitely try to move the equilibrium towards SO3 and more SO3 will be produced because there are no lower number of gas molecules on the right hand side. So D would be the right option. Question number 16 is a universal indicator contains several dyes. The reversible reaction of one dye in indium OH, I think it is indium OH is shown. A few drops of universal indicator are added to 50 centimeter cube of water. A few drops of dilute hydrochloric acid are added to the solution. Which row describes what happens when the acid is added? Now acid is added means that it will provide H positive ions, so the pH will decrease. Now for the color of solution shifts toward, it will shift towards the color Y. It will shift towards the color Y because now there is greater concentration of H positive ions and these H positive ions will react with indium hydroxide to give me the Y color indium. So it will, the color will shift towards the color Y. So B is the right option. Question number 17. The combustion of methane is a redox reaction. Which statement about this reaction is correct? It is a redox reaction, so only carbon is oxidized. No, hydrogen is oxidized as well because it gets O2. Only carbon is reduced. No, only oxygen is oxidized. Only oxygen is oxidized. Oxygen is not being oxidized. It is being reduced here. This oxygen attaches with H2, so it gets hydrogen. It means it is reduced here. It is reduced. So D is the right option. Question number 18 is which method of preparation of magnesium sulfate is an example of redox reaction? Now first I have to classify between a simple reaction and a redox reaction. A redox reaction is the one in which the oxidation states of the reacting species changes. Some of the reacting species may have changed their oxidation state after the reaction and some may not, but at least 2 particles should have their oxidation state changed. As I can see in A, the oxidation state of magnesium is 0 here, and for hydrogen it is 1 here, and in the product side I have the oxidation state of hydrogen is 0 and for magnesium it is 2. So A is definitely a redox reaction. All other are incorrect. You do not even have to check those. So A is the right option. Question number 19. Samples of HCl and HNO3 are tested using universal indicator paper. The sample of HCl has a pH of 4 and a sample of HNO3 has a pH of 2. Which statement is correct? The sample of HCl has a pH of 4 and the sample of HNO3 is a pH of 2. So HNO3 is more powerful. HCl is a weak acid and HNO3 is a strong acid. No, HCl is a strong but HNO3 is weak. But here the principle of dilution, here the principle of dilution of these samples have changed their properties of is strong or weak acid, so A is incorrect. HNO3 has a lower formula mass than HCl. No, it has greater formula mass, so B is also incorrect. HNO3 is more concentrated than the HCl in aqueous state. Yes, this is true. HNO3 has a pH of 2. A sample of HCl has a pH of 4, means that pH, this HCl, it is initially stronger acid, but this has greater dilution. It has greater dilution. Now it has a pH of 4. pH has increased here. And for the HNO3, the pH is 2. So this HNO3 aqueous solution will have more concentration of HNO3 in a lower amount of dilute solvent. So this dilute solvent or solution, whatever you say, so C is true. HCl has dissociated more than the HNO3. No, HCl has dissociated uh, less than HNO3. So C is the right option. Question number 20. So we are almost the halfway to the end. Which two substances react to form a salt and water only? Aqueous sodium carbonate and dilute sulfuric acid will not produce water along with them. So aqueous sodium chloride and aqueous silver nitrate, again an insoluble salt, will be prepared. Aqueous sodium hydroxide and dilute ethanoic acid and sodium hydroxide. So this will give me salt, which is the sodium ethanoate, along with water. So C is true. The zinc and dilute HCl will give me hydrogen gas along with the salt. So D is incorrect. Question number 21. And the elements are arranged in groups and periods in the periodic table. Now which row is correct? The elements, now if I check this last column, elements in the periodic table are arranged by increasing proton number according to the Mendeleev's principle. Period is determined by the number of occupied shells. The number of occupied shells. So definitely A is true. Group is determined by the number of electrons in the outermost shell. So yes, we all know this. A is the right option. Question number 22. Sodium, potassium, rubidium are in group 1 of the periodic table. Chlorine, bromine and iodine are group 7. Which statement is correct? Bromine displaces chlorine from an aqueous solution of sodium chloride. No, it can't, because chlorine is more electronegative. It will not allow bromine to even come closer to it. Iodine is discharged at the negative electrode when concentrated aqueous potassium iodide is electrolyzed. No, iodine is discharged at the positive electrode. So B is also incorrect. Rubidium has a greater tendency to form positive ions than potassium. Yes, if you go down the group, the electropositivity increases. So C is the right option. D, sodium and potassium both react, but the reaction is more violent with sodium. No, reaction is more violent with potassium, because again electropositivity increases down the group. So C is the right option. Question number 23. Which statement about transition elements and their compounds is correct? The copper oxide catalyzes the conversion of sulfuric acid to copper sulfate. No, it itself occurs, it itself participates as a reactant. Iron allows hydrogen and nitrogen to react at a low temperature. Yes, this is true. The easiest application is the Haber's process. Nickel increases the rate of reaction between hydrogen and saturated hydrocarbons. No, between hydrogen and unsaturated hydrocarbons at a temperature of 250 or 200 degrees C. A vanadium 5 oxide speeds up the oxidation of sulfur to sulfur dioxide. It acts as a catalyst, but for conversion of SO2 into SO3, not sulfur to sulfur dioxide. So D is also incorrect. B is the best choice. Question number 24. Three statements about the particles properties of metals are shown. All metals conduct electricity. Yes, all metals have two electrons in the innermost shell. All metals have two electrons in the innermost shell. Again, this is true. All metals have high melting point. No. Now, the melting points for group 1 increase down the group, and similarly, mercury is a liquid. So 3 is incorrect. All metals do not have high melting points. 1 and 2 is true only. So A is the right option. Question number 25 is which statement about metals and their uses are correct? Aluminum is used to make overhead electrical cables because it has a low density. Yes, this is true. Aluminium is used to make food containers because it is resistant to corrosion. This is also true. Copper is used to make electrical wiring because it is ductile. All these are true. So D is the right option. Question number 26 is stainless steel is an alloy. It contains iron and more than one other element. Which elements other than iron are commonly used in stainless steel? Now you should know iron along with carbon is the best combination. So carbon should be there. So among nickel and zinc, I had are more commonly used in stainless steel. Nickel is used more commonly because nickel is easily available. Nickel is commonly available. It is easily found. So in extraction of zinc, a lot of energy input is required. So I had say that nickel would be best because it is cost efficient as well, and it is a sacrificial metal. So C is the right option. Question number 27, 8. The equations for some of the reactions of metals Q, R, and T are shown. Using the equations, what is the order of reactivity of Q, R, and T? Now, if I react copper with the compound of Q, copper will displace it. Copper will displace it. And copper is just above gold and silver in the reactivity series. So I had to say Q is either gold or silver. So it is the least reactive. It is least reactive, definitely, definitely. Now if I combine R with a sulfate of R will displace T. R will displace T. R will displace T means that R is the most reactive, and then I am left with T, and T is reacts with H2SO4 and it displaces TSO4 and it displaces hydrogen. So yes, C is true because Q is the least reactive. First thing is that then R will, if R will displace T, then obviously T is lower reactive than obviously T is lower reactive than R, and if T displaces hydrogen, then it is definitely above Q. So C is the right option. You should memorize the reactivity of the metals. Question number 28 here. Zinc is used to galvanize iron, which prevents the iron from rusting. Now, which statements are correct? The layer of zinc forms a barrier between the ions and the oxygen and water in the atmosphere. This is true. Zinc will oxidize before the iron does, even if the zinc layer is scratched. This is true. Zinc will oxidize. Now, the answer for second statement is already in the third. He has said that iron is oxidized. Iron will oxidize. So, what is oxidation? Oxidation is the loss of electron. And in 3 he states when iron rest atoms of iron gain electrons. No, they lose electrons. He has already told you this. So 1 and 2 are true, only they are right. A is the right option. Question number 29 here. 3 statements about extraction of aluminum are shown. Now the electrolyte in aluminum oxide is aluminum oxide dissolved in molten cryolite. This is true. Now, carbon is used for both the cathode and the anode. Yes, carbon is an inert electrode. Carbon dioxide is given off at the cathode. No, it is not. So only 1 and 2 is right. You can check about this MCQ metals from the metals chapter in which the extraction of aluminum is given. So A is the right option. Question number 30. What is the cause of deoxygenation of water in a lake? Deoxygenation. Deoxygenation of water in a lake. Acid rain, no. Excess calcium hydroxide, no. Insoluble nitrates, no. Soluble fertilizers are one of the main reasons why the water in a lake is deoxygenated. So D is the best choice. Question number 31. Dissolved substances can cause eutrophication and a deoxygenation of water. Now, if you see here, he has already said that dissolved substances can cause eutrophication and deoxygenation of water. Now, if you do not even know the answer to 30, you know that he has said in next MCQ, dissolved substances can cause eutrophication and deoxygenation. Then obviously, if something is soluble, then it will cause deoxygenation. Then you can get your answer obviously D. Now, if I move to 31, dissolved substances. First thing is that how many of the ions can cause this effect. Now there are three main nitrates, or there are three main compounds. These are the NPK. You know that nitrates, the phosphates, and the potassium salts. So nitrates and phosphates are the only two which mainly cause eutrophication, the increase in chemical nutrients. So B is the right option. Question number 32. Which statements about a global warming is correct? Methane produced by digestion in animals has no effect on the rate of global warming. No, methane is also a greenhouse gas. It increases global warming. Now, the products of burning fossil fuels have no effect on the rate of global warming. It has high effect. The CO2 emission has greater effect on the rate of global warming. So B is also incorrect. The product of decomposition of vegetation have no effect on the rate of global warming. Again, it has an effect. So I am only left with D. D is true. The products of photosynthesis have no effect on the rate of global warming. Photosynthesis produces oxygen and glucose, which never affects the rate of global warming. Oxygen is not a greenhouse gas. So D is the right option. Question number 33. The structures of three compounds W, X, and Y are shown. Now, which statement about these three compounds are correct? W and Y are both alcohols, and X is a carboxylic acid. If I check this, so W has an OH, W is a diol, and Y is simply an ol. So yes, both are alcohols, and X is a carboxylic acid because the carboxyl group is attached to it. So one is true. W, X, and Y have the same molecular formula. W has 1, 2, 3 carbons. X has 1, 2, 3, and Y has 1, 2, 3 carbons for hydrogen 1, 2. W has 8 hydrogens. X has 6 hydrogens. So they do not have the same molecular formula. W and Y are structural isomers of each others. Now you carefully see, uh, you carefully see the both of these elements, both of these compounds, W and Y. In W, there is methyl group on the both end. In Y, there is a methyl and a methane group on one side, and along with it an alcohol is attached. With alcohol, this it should be like CH3. Now it is he has written in CH2, so means that this H and this H attaches with one O, which moves to this position. So yes, W and Y are structural isomers of each other. So B is the right option. Question number 34. What is the displayed formula of propyl methanoate? So propyl methanoate. So there should be CHO for the methanoate because it is double bonded to the oxygen. So clearly it is D. It is not A because the oxygen here, there is oxygen here. It is not C because there are two carbons here. It is not B because this carbon should directly be bonded to the directly be double bonded to an oxygen. So B is also incorrect. So this is the methanoate part, and then I have the propyl 1, 2, 3, which is the propyl part. So propyl methanoate, D is the right option. Question number 35, very easy question. If you remember the uses of fractions of petroleum, the table shows some fractions obtained by fractional distillation of petroleum and their uses. So the fraction one is bitumen used is making roads. So is bitumen yes, bitumen is used for making roads. Kerosene and paraffin is chemical feedstock. No, it is not. Naphtha is not a jet fuel. Refinery gases, the soy gas, the common example 1 and 4 are true. B is the best choice. Question number 36 now. Which equation shows the rate of reaction of ethane with chlorine in the presence of ultraviolet light? Simply, if I react alkane with chlorine, bromine, then the reaction would be that a substitution reaction would occur, and chlorine will take one of the hydrogens from the alkane, and HCl molecule is formed as shown in C. So you know this, you should know this, you should memorize the concept, you should know the reaction. So C is the right answer. Hexa 3-enol, so hexanol, on which the ol is attached to third carbon. So how many molecules of oxygen are needed for complete combustion of one molecule of hexanol? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So C 6, 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, no, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, 15, and 16. No, am I right? 3, 2, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. C6H13, and there is, sorry, C6H13, and there is one oxygen along to combust with this moles of oxygen, that will give me CO2 along with water, and energy is released. Now I have to balance this. So if I put 6 here and I put there are 13, there should be 14 hydrogens. 3 to 5, 6, 6 and 8, 10, 13. Yes, 3 here. So there are 14 hydrogens. There are 14 hydrogens to 7. Now if I balance this, I have 12 oxygens, and I have 7 oxygens, so there are a total of 19. I already have 1 here, so I have to get 18 oxygens. I put 9 here, so there should be 9 moles of oxygen required for complete combustion of hexanol. So A is the right option. So question number 38, an organic compound P is dissolved in water. The concentration of solution is 0.1 moles per decimeter cube and the pH 3. A solid is added to the solution at effervescence is seen. Which equation could represent this reaction? Now some of you might directly go with C or D because effervescence is seen, but effervescence is also seen in hydrogen gas as well. So now if you look carefully, so CH3CO2H to magnesium. So magnesium has a valency of 2 and this has a valency of -2, and hydrogen gas is formed, so A can be right. Now in B I check, the valency is not equal. The valency of magnesium is 2, the valency is not equal, so B is incorrect. In C I can see here CH3 Co2 K2CO3. Again the valency of potassium here is +1, not +2. It is +1. So C also is incorrect. Now why is D incorrect? Because an organic compound, HCl is not an organic compound. So A is the right option. Question number 39, chromatography, my favorite. A paper chromatography experiment is used to find an retardation factor value of Fe3 positive. The chromatogram is shown. To make the spot containing Fe3 more visible, the paper is sprayed with aqueous sodium hydroxide, so a precipitate of iron trioxide forms. The chromatogram, the RF value of Fe3 is given by this, and the color of precipitate is red brown. Ferric means red brown. Fe3 is the ferric, it gives a red brown color. So B and D are incorrect. Now for the value of retardation factor, so this is the baseline, this is the solvent front, so this is the Y, and this is the distance traveled by this ferric ion. So it should be the retardation factor is equal to the distance traveled by the solvent, or distance traveled uh, by the substance. Like here it is ferric over the distance traveled by the solvent. So X over Y, A is the right option. So question number 14, last MCQ. A laboratory has a powdered mixture of solid iodine and solid carbon. Okay, iodine is highly soluble in hexane and slightly soluble in water. Carbon is insoluble in both. One sample of the mixture is shaken with hexane. This is X. So one sample is shaken with hexane. So iodine will dissolve in hexane. Carbon will not. And a second sample is shaken with water. So both won't dissolve. Which procedure is used to prepare a pure sample of iodine here? Now X is distilled and the distillate is evaporated to dryness. X is distilled and distillate is evaporated to dryness. Now iodine is soluble in hexane. I think that distillation would not be the best method here. Yes, iodine is soluble. If I take about distillation and the distilled is evaporated to dryness, no, it will not work because iodine will still remain. Iodine will still remain dissolved in the hexane. Hexane will evaporate first, and iodine will evaporate later. So so procedure A would not work because iodine will remain dissolved in the distillate. It will not evaporate. So A is incorrect. X is filtered. No, it will evaporate. Sorry, it will evaporate, but this may also take iodine with it, and this we cannot get a pure sample of iodine which we need. X is filtered. Now X is filtered, so the carbon is X is filtered, so carbon is now independent. Now we have separated carbon, and the filtrate is allowed to evaporate to dryness. Yes, this will work, I guess. I'm not sure about this MCQ quite clearly. I think this will work. If X is filtered and I filtrate is allowed to evaporate to dryness. Now, if I revise the concepts in the both here, now if I check this option again, X is distilled. Now X cannot be distilled. Why? Because it also contains carbons in it. Carbon is insoluble in both salts, so distillation won't work in this case. Although I had said that iodine is highly soluble in water, but I can separate iodine from hexane X if I give it temperature and I evaporate it. Now X already contains both carbon and iodine. So how can I separate a pure sample of iodine? So only the given procedures in A won't work alone. We also have to do some other modifications. So if I filter X first, then it will work as shown in B. If X is filtered and then the filtrate is allowed to evaporate to dryness, hexane will evaporate. The intermolecular forces formed between iodine and hexane molecules as a result of solution-solvent interaction would diminish a lot, and this will allow us to get a pure sample of iodine. So I think B will work definitely. X is filtered. If X is filtered and the residue, now the residue is carbon. We do not have to get carbon. Carbon is allowed to evaporate to dryness. No, this will not help us again. Y is distilled. So another sample is shared between mixture. So Y is distilled and distilled is evaporated to. Now iodine is insoluble in both. Iodine is also insoluble in X, and carbon is also insoluble in water, which insoluble in Y, which is water. Both are insoluble, so again distillation won't work here. So B is the right answer. So that's all for our today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share my videos to your friends so that they will gear up for the upcoming CIEs, and they should have a better preparation for the CIEs. Hope you have understood the concepts which I have applied here. So best of luck, and goodbye. Allah Hafiz.